Well, we are back with another episode of the new series called Let's Get It Poppin'. I am joined once again by Franklin, aka Kunx, who is one of
Hello.
the co-hosts from the commentary that I happen to edit, and I guess we're all part of the same fucking team at this point. So, at this point, I'm poaching guys from that channel to help me do things on this channel because I have things I want to talk about that have to do with the Pauper format, and I have not been, producing all that much of it in the past, I don't know, couple years. It's usually just the one gameplay video a month, and shit, I don't even think we did one last month. And then, we got this last Pauper episode out, which was just kind of hot button stuff that I wanted to talk about real quick, and it worked out. Well, I just released on the channel. Well, you guys will have seen it already. It is live. This shouldn't be too far out from when that went live, but I just did a set review with one of my stream team guys, Rev, and we talked about all the good-ish cEDH cards in the set. You can check that out now. It's around. You'll find it. It's on the page.
Yeah, let's go look at the card up top, somewhere, wherever it is.
Which I never do. So maybe I'll put it in the show notes. Whatever the case. I wanted to, for the first time ever, inaugural set review for Pauper. And because the commentary guys weren't able to get one pushed out, I figured this is kind of a collab thing that we could do, get it out there, and at least, they can point it to this video if people want to know about cards that came out in this set. And so.
Yeah, because between how Gator, Rohan, and I feel, this set is super busted for cPDH and this Pauper commander in general.
I mean, that's great. That's great to hear. I'm less of an authority when it comes to this kind of stuff, but I was able to notate some cards that I felt were pretty good. However, for the cEDH side of things, we kind of felt like it was underwhelming. But then, a lot of the cards we put on, even just the honorable mentions, we started discussing and we started finding... it's kind of a thing, you look at a card by yourself and you go, okay, this is kind of okay, I think, maybe. And then you put it on a list and then you talk with somebody else, you bounce ideas off of each other and you go, oh, for instance, there was this Gear Hulk. There's a cycle of Gear Hulks, just like there was back in Kaladesh. And the one that I liked the best was the Azorius one. And it seemed kind of good on its face or whatever. And we talked about it, and then we talked about it some more, and then it was like, oh, this could be part of Displacer Kitten loops or Hullbreaker Horror loops, and it just gets really fucking busted really fucking fast, and it was like, oh, okay, this is even better than I thought. So once you start really evaluating cards, you can find differences. But with that said, I think we have a pretty decent list of cards here. We have a few honorable mentions, a few cards that could be played as Commander, which we're going to start with, and then our official list of what we think the actual most playable cards are. So with that said, I think it's time to dive in. So as I said, starting with honorable mentions, which we are just kind of lumping these commander options in with the honorable mentions because they're nothing super exciting, super busted to where it's like, oh my god, this is automatic, somebody's making this commander. They're just kind of options that you might think about, and maybe you won't play them in competitive. Maybe they're just good Pauper commander, casual commanders, but We'll see.
Yeah, nothing in the set really speaks out and says, yes, I'm going to be really good in competitive Pauper Commander. Outside of maybe the vanilla uncommons, but those are more of a meme pick.
Yeah.
But outside of that, there's really nothing in this set that, none of the uncommon creatures speak out to me specifically.
There was only one, and we'll get to it.
Yeah, unless of the Pauper Commander Rules Committee, again, says, yeah, you can do a rule break month for vehicles. Just allow vehicles for a single month. That'll be totally fine.
Do it. Just do it. Sorry.
Sorry, I think I got possessed again.
Well, you put this first one on, so I'll let you read it off if you would be so kind.
Yeah, so my honorable mention for an uncommon is a Slick Imitator. It's a 2-mana 1/3 blue creature that says start your engines. When you're at max speed, it's pay 1, sacrifice this creature, copy target spell you control. You may choose new targets for this copy. It's my honorable mention solely because of the art. I think it'll be pretty cute in regular Commander. Outside of that, look at it. It's a little slime dude.
It's like a hammerhead shark slime thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but the funny thing is the rest of the sharks are white sharks or bull sharks. And he's the only hammerhead shark, so the lone shark in the background is like, hey, what's going on?
Yeah, what is that thing? I could see in a weird world where, like, just having the ability to, like, copy a spell out of your command zone isn't terrible. We should also read off the start your engines part, mechanically speaking, just because, people who are
we're going to be
may not have, well, they also may not have watched my other video where we did actually talk about all the new mechanics in the set. So this one, start your engines, it's a mechanic that tracks a counter up to a total of 4. When this or anything with start your engines ETBs, you get that first speed. And I'm assuming there's probably going to be a speed counter or something printed in the set. We haven't seen that, but
no, it's a token.
Okay, so yeah, it does exist. So that you'll put a die on that. Okay, cool. So it comes in, it does that. Then anytime on your turn, if an opponent loses life, you go up a speed. So theoretically, you play this, you get the one
once. Yeah, sadly, it's only once per turn during your turn. I believe the turn that you play, you can still go up to speed 2, and then the following turns you go to speed 3 and 4.
It says it increases once on each of your turns when an opponent loses life. So first turn should work. So theoretically, anything that has this will get up to 2 speed as long as you can do some damage to an opponent. And it's loss of life, it's not damage. So it can be combat damage, or it can be any spell, burn spell, symmetrical drain, Arabella effects, whatever the case. Yes, exactly. Then, once you've hit max speed, which is 4, so once you've gotten to that 4th counter on your speed token or whatever, then these additional abilities open up. And in this case, it is that copy spell. Does this look like a good commander? No. But somebody might play it, and it's probably better in casual. But honestly, having just a copy spell in the command zone isn't terrible. It's just not really...
It's not terrible. It's not strong. I don't know when you would need it, and I don't think Blue has access to any Undyne effects. But again, it's on here because I saw this art, and I fell in love with it. I'm like, I need this as a playmat. I need this in my life. Like, I can't look... I look at this, and I'm like, I can't be sad anymore for today.
That's the thing that I think is funny too, is that there's so many cards out there that have this great artwork and it's relegated to a common. And I used to be, cDH snob guy, where it's just why is this cool ass art on this shit card that I'm never gonna play? And it used to always piss me off. And people would be like, oh, the art on this is so good. And I'm like, yeah, but the card sucks. But I get where you're coming from. So the next one up, the next two actually I picked, so I'll read it off real fast. This next one is End Rider Spike Spitter. It's a human mercenary 3/4 for 4, which is not a bad rate on a body. Has reach, which is also not terrible. Can stop a lot of flying threats coming your way. It has the same start your engine mechanics, so of course speed, blah blah blah. Once we've gotten to max speed though, it says at the beginning of your upkeep, exile top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. Incidental card draw or card advantage out of the command zone is not terrible. However, I think this is pretty much, the 5th or 6th or 10th best mono red commander you could be running, so your mileage may vary. I just like the exile part. It does. It does. It blocks Malcolms. It blocks other 1/1, 2/2, 3/3 flyers. It's going to block those for days. You're probably not attacking with this all that often because it does have the reach and is going to protect you. And then, again, at some point between, turns 4-ish, 3 to 4, if this gets played, you're not going to play this on turn 1. So, yeah, it's probably more turn 5, 6, maybe.
Yeah.
You're going to get this extra card draw. And in Pauper, it's a slower format. Games do end at that point, but it's kind of rare. Most of the time, you're looking at, a 10-turn game. So, you're going to get some card advantage out of this, but, that was pretty much
even if the meta does speed up to where it is, 5 to 6 turn game, some games are still going to go up to, like you said, 8, 9, 10. So
right, I think you're going to at least get 3 or 4 impulsive draws off of this, and sometimes that can be enough to win you a game. However, it is mono red at that point, and mono red can be doing better stuff, especially Dargo Kedis or whatever. So
yeah, but mono red does need a little bit of help with finding cards, and this will do it.
I agree.
Like we said, it's free, and plus in red, you're going to have a whole bunch of pingers. So
exactly,
hitting max speed is not a problem.
Not at all. Not at all. So the one that I think actually has the most legs as a commander is this next one called Veteran Beast Rider. It's a 3/4 human knight. It costs 1 a green and a white. So 3 mana for a 3/4 body. That's a good rate.
That's already
it
an
has
amazing rate. I love it.
right, and then it has the clause at the beginning of your end step: untap each creature you control. So you have pseudo vigilance to your team. You're in creature or in weenie territory with these colors, where you're going to be able to play out a lot of cheap creatures, make tokens, yada yada yada. Have a lot of ways to attack, and then untap everything at the end of turn and have everything ready to block. And sometimes that could be the difference maker. And I've seen tons of games, especially you put this in I'm considering it for the one of my heir apparent decks that is Selesnya. Being able to swing out with all of your hairs and then have them untap and have them as blockers means you don't have that crackback where you die and lose because you left yourself open. Notably, it also has a secondary clause for 2, a green and a white, creatures you control get +1/+1 till end of turn. So if you can manage to make infinite mana, which is not super easy to do in the format, you could potentially just pump your whole team and go. But again, if this is a commander that you use for potentially like a hair deck, well, you can see where this can go. 4 mana, all of your hairs are now 3/3s and 2/2s, and that's a lot of damage. I've had turns with hair apparent decks where I had, 15 of them on the board, and then you pump them once, and that's an additional 15 damage. Like, that can go hard.
That's insane.
Exactly. So I think this one actually has some legs. It might actually be one of the better options for a hair deck as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say, even with a hair apparent deck, if you put in all of the mana dorks that require you to tap another creature, those fit in right here. Those fit in perfectly with ease. It reminds me of having was it Wilson Far Traveler, kind of built together in one card without all the Wilson keywords.
It doesn't have any keywords. That is the one thing that is a downside to it, is that it is just kind of a vanilla 3/4, but it just has this passive ability that just says everything has vigilance. So swing a wave, my friend, because you're gonna untap on each of your end steps. And if there are mana dorks in your deck, which there should be because you're in green, those now can be tapped for mana without having to worry at all, because at the end step you're going to untap them again, and now you have mana open for your interaction, which is kind of a big deal.
Amazing.
So I think I might actually build a fucking hair apparent deck with this, because I'm talking myself into it. It's pretty good.
Like, the biggest problem that green white actually has, that they're kind of forced to tap out the first 4 to 5 turns.
Yeah, and if you get this guy down turn 2, you're never having to worry about what you're tapping, really. I mean, you can leave your land up and just use your dorks, which is nice.
Yeah, very few decks have so much mana available to them.
Yeah, I think this one actually has some legs as a commander, and like I said, I might end up actually making a hair apparent version of this, because, well, that's been my thing. I've been trying to find the right one that does it just right, and I really like the rabbit, the one from Bloomburrow that's the XX equal to number of creatures you control. I really like that one because it can get really big and it can do some stuff, but it doesn't have any evasion, so it ends up where a lot of times you just got this big beater that does nothing, right? Actually, I think it might have trample on it. I forget. But whatever the case, I think this might be a decent option for that list. But you want to read off these next 3, the next few honorable mentions?
Yeah, so my first honorable mention's actually another white card. It's a Collision Course. It's a 2 mana white sorcery that costs 1 and a white. That says choose 1. Collision Course deals X damage to target creature, where X is the number of permanents you control that are creatures and/or vehicles. And the second mode is destroy target artifact.
It's a worse Thraben Charm, but it's still on that same sort of level.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's a worse Thraben Charm, but it's still a Thraben Charm.
Right, it's still doing the thing you want it to do.
Yeah, it's still white was a target of removal. Sure, it's a little bit slower. Sure, it doesn't exile, it doesn't exile yards, but it does destroy target artifact, which is part of the discussion we were having about the Raven Charm is that not many people are running disenchants, and we'd all much rather be able to destroy an artifact. So here you go.
I mean, there's that, and then there's also the little clause that it can hit vehicles. I don't know that there was really anything in this format that's going to see play, but having the option, maybe at some point.
Still, the amount of vehicles, I don't think it's going to really matter. But just again, having deal X damage equal to the number of dudes you have, that's good enough. Because even with Thraben Charm, because that doubled scales immensely, but normally you'll have 1 or 2 creatures on board, and that's usually the number you need to hit.
Right. I mean, max you need to hit is like 4 or 5, and that's not hard to do either.
Yeah, and if you're worried about Arabella, you just use the second mode on this.
That too, and it's also got some like Easter egg spoiler or flavor text there. The Gators are driving like idiots, and well, we know a guy named Gators, so
yeah. I mean, I was driving up this weekend, so you didn't have to worry about it, so that was fine. Yeah, and then one of the next honorable mentions, Skybox Foundry, which
fair.
I like this a lot better than
it's
Hole Drifter. Oh, sorry, Skybox Ferry. What was it? What did I say? Did I say
Foundry?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Skybox Ferry. Yeah, I like this a lot better than Hole Drifter that Wizards is trying to push. Because this is a 5-mana vehicle that's a 4/4 body with flying that says Crew 2. More importantly, it says Cycling for 2.
I was high on this mainly because, I put it in my Glaring Fleshraker deck already because I never attack with the Fleshraker. For the most part, like every once in a while, yes. Like early game, if I get it down, somebody's open, sure.
Yeah,
but being able to crew this, crewing this with the Fleshraker to make it a 4/4 flyer, busted. And then in the event that you get it in early game and you just need to draw a card because you're looking for a land or you're digging for something, this will cycle and get you something. And in that regard, I think it's very good. It's also 5 CMC, so like Fleshraker has a good chance to beat. Well, the thing is that Fleshraker gets the bodies that make the mana. Getting to 5 is pretty easy. And then you cast this, and it still pings the table and gives you a mana back. So it essentially costs you only 4 mana as long as your Fleshraker's on the board. Which makes it even better. And in that deck, this is a shoe-in, and this is why it's on honorable mentions, because I don't know that it really fits in anywhere else unless you have a 2-power commander that you don't want to attack with normally. And this enables it.
Yeah, I think the 5-mana scares away too many people, but I think in Fleshraker, you're perfectly fine.
I think it's a great card for that deck.
Actually, in Fleshraker, doesn't this come down on like turn 3 anyway? No, it comes down on turn...
So it depends. It really depends. It really depends. So like normally, most of my average game, Fleshraker comes down naturally at turn 3. Like there's not really a lot of acceleration to get you to it. But once you've dropped it on turn 3, then that's when you go, okay, I have a handful of like 5 to 6 cards because I haven't been doing anything but playing lands, and then now I'm casting this. And then I go, okay, now I cast this and this and this. So turn 3,
all your 0 drops.
Turn 3, I put him out. Turn 4, I shit a bunch of stuff out and make a bunch of mana. And then turn 5, you play the vehicle. And then now your Fleshraker can attack as that, but you've also gotten the mana refund and the ping. So I think it's good there. And this next one I also think is potentially good for that deck as well. Maybe not other decks, but it's Scrap Compactor. It's 1-cost artifact that says pay 3, tap sack it. It deals 3 damage to target creature, which I'm already running a bunch of those types of effects in the deck. So this kind of falls in line with that. I wish it said ETB draw card. If it did, this would already be in the deck. But because it doesn't have that draw card clause, I've been prioritizing those that ETB draw me a card and then have additional effects. So in this instance,
that's what Fleshraker needs. You need to draw out of your lanes.
Right, and this is fine. I mean, it does 3 damage to a creature, but then for 6, tap and sack it, you can destroy a target creature or vehicle. And it's just destroy, which is pretty okay, and that's why I'm also running like Urn of Godfire and stuff like that has a higher cost to sack, but can destroy anything. It has flexibility, which I like. I haven't been able to find a slot in it for the Fleshraker, though, because I feel like there's just other ones that are a little bit better, but I wanted to mention it because it is a removal artifact for cheap. And some decks need that. But, I mean, that kind of wraps up what we had for honorable mentions. So we're now going to move over to our list, which is, there's a few cards here that, we try to pick the best ones. But we are going to go through in Wooburg order.
If we missed any, just leave them down in the comments and yell at us.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I picked over it with a pretty fine-tooth comb. I think we found everything that's actually playable. There might be a couple other options in niche decks, but we didn't want to get too nitty gritty because, there's time limits to these types of videos. So
Yeah.
So starting off with white, you want to fire off the first one? We can like bounce back and forth, I suppose.
Yeah. So my first one for white is Light Wheel Enhancements. It's a 1 mana enchantment aura that says enchant target creature or vehicle, has start your engine, enchanted permanent gains +1/+1, and has vigilance. Max speed, you can make casters from your graveyard. So it's like a white Rancor.
Yeah, so +1/+1 in vigilance instead of +1/+1 trample. It does,
Yeah.
I think, have to stay on the field long enough to get the max speed, or otherwise you get to max speed with other cards in your deck before that clause happens.
Because remember you have the emblem, right?
Oh right, it's
like
damage. It's
height.
damage. I forgot.
Yeah. Yeah, so even if this is the only max speed card in your whole deck,
you're right.
You'll eventually hit it.
Yeah, I mean, having a repeatable, just like 1/1 buff, it's probably going Wilson Far Traveler. That's probably like the first deck it goes in, and I don't know what else.
Yeah, I think any of the like other white Enchantress decks will put it, so probably like Theater Enchanter will run it because again, it's just free.
Right.
But
yeah,
again, it's just Rancor in white. It's just like no real loss in running it.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, because I didn't consider it as being an emblem. Yeah, if you throw this down, it could be in any deck with white. So it could just be a free little repeatable enchantment.
It's a little pump.
Yeah, it's not terrible. The first one that I put on the list here for white was this new creature called the Voyager Quick Welder. It's 2 and a white for an artifact creature robot. Artificer is a 2/4, which is not a bad rate. But it just has a blanket ability that says artifact spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. I feel like this goes into Teshar immediately because that just helps along with Teshar loops and whatever. I don't really know anywhere else that it might go, but just having artifact spells cost less if you're in any artifact heavy deck, that feels really good.
You know, I don't know if I would play this in Abdel. I want to because I get cheaper mana rocks. Yeah, it might have a home in Abdel only because again, cheaper mana rocks. Because I'm already running Sunscape Familiar, so I can get cheaper blue spells for flicker. So my flickers are cheaper.
I mean, my instincts are saying that like it may not have a lot of homes right now, but I think this card eventually becomes a staple because there's going to be some artifacts.
It has less than 3 power, right? So Arabella has 1 less commander attack.
So I thought about that, but then I looked at my Arabella deck, and that's literally the only artifact in the whole deck is Arabella, and maybe like a couple other creatures. I'm not running any actual artifacts, so maybe a different variant that might be great. And that could be the same.
More artifact heavy, sure.
Yeah, but then also, like I said, I think in the future there may be like some busted or downshifted commander that cares about artifacts, and this just ends up being like a slam dunk, you know? So, reducing the cost of spells is always good, and it's never gonna not be good, so it's just a matter of finding where it goes. And I don't play the deck, but there's probably a commander that already exists where this does something, besides Teshar, where this does something.
There has to be something that's blue-white that cares about artifacts that I'm probably just not thinking about right now.
That's where I was leaning to, is that like a blue-white deck with artifact stuff is just gonna love this. I would put this in Glaring Fleshraker if it was colorless fully, because it's just another Foundry Inspector, and that's great, but it's white. So
yeah, we love those.
But I think Foundry Inspector is already in the Teshar list, so this is just an additional copy of Foundry Inspector. And if you can get both of them out, now all of a sudden Teshar's casting 3 mana rocks for 1, 2 mana anything for free. Like, yeah, that's good upside. And I know that's something that it's kind of needing outside of other pieces to the combo that don't really exist outside of. Yeah, what's
to take things back over to like the more aggro side. My next pick is Lotus Guard Disciple.
Yep.
It's a 3 mana 2/2 flyer. That's a bird cleric that says when this creature ETBs, target creature or vehicle gains lifelink and indestructible until end of turn. So another Wilson card.
It's also just another white protection spell. I wish it had flash. And I realize flash on a 3 mana or on a common is probably not happening all that often.
No, but I would immediately bump this up to like an uncommon or a rare.
Right. It's just having the flash so that it is an actual protection spell on someone else's turn would make it so much better. But I'll take it the way it is, because you can just incidentally have a big creature and just give it lifelink and swing in, and it's indestructible, so they can't kill it, and you just gain a bunch of life. Or even just something little, to where like somebody doesn't want to block it, or you're trading because they block and you kill the thing, and then you still gain some life on top of it, which is not bad.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit hard to force a block on something that has lifelink and indestructible, but I guess if they're forced to block, sure.
Well, it is kind of a force though, because if you're swinging in with like an 8 power thing, just hypothetical, like you've got an Eldrazi or something that's got 8 power, and you play this thing, give it lifelink and indestructible, you swing out, and they go, well, if I don't block this, I take 8, and then you gain 8 life. If I do block this, you still gain 8 life, but I don't take shit. So, and yeah, your thing lives, but yeah, it may actually be a thing that forces a block, and that's not terrible. And then you're also getting a 2/2 body with flying on top of it, which... That's not, it's not bad. It's just good value.
Like, I kind of wish it was a little bit bigger, but again, the text written on the card has to like match, the Chaos and Cast and the power and toughness. So it can't be super busted and be, a 3/3 flyer.
I know. I hate this is why I hate the format. It's like sometimes I'm just like, God, can you just give us some shit that we actually want? But I understand why they can't, because it's common. But then we are still getting power creep regardless, because in the last couple years, 2-3 years now that I've been playing Pauper, the power creep is real. It has been happening. So
yeah, so that's what me, Gator, and Rohan over on commentary have been saying, that this set is like one of the best sets for Pauper Commander, and probably 60 card Pauper. I mean, it's no Modern Horizons 3, but Modern Horizons 3 is its own giant mess.
Yeah, you're not... Those types of Eternal sets, you do not compare to, regardless if you're a standard set.
Yeah, that's just for a standard set, this is like one of the best ones next to like probably Baldur's Gate.
It's pretty good in the sense of like there are a number of cards. Like I've looked at... There have been literal sets that have come out, and I was like, there's 2 cards in this whole set that I care about. And that's it. And yeah, there are other options, but it was just like me personally, the decks that I play, what am I actually looking at in this set where I'm like, I'm adding this to a deck, and there's literally been times where it was like 2 cards, and I'm like, that's terrible. We're already, 8 cards deep, and we still have probably about 10 to 15 to talk
every
about.
Other color to talk about.
Right, so next one is Spot Cycle Scouter. It's a 1 and a white for a vehicle. It's a 3/2. When it ETBs, you scry 2, and it has Crew 1. Crew 1 is pretty good, because if you're in like a Heir Apparent deck or something like that, you're just using a Heir to make it into a 3/2, and then it also just comes in and scries. So card selection for 2, not great, but it's doing something when it comes in. But the body's pretty good. Like, with a Crew 1 cost is really good. Yeah.
It's free.
And then if you're in that Beast Rider thing that we were talking about earlier, well, oh no, I paid 4 mana, and now it's even bigger. So,
yeah. And I got another mountain vehicle for you. My next one is a Brightfield Glider. It's a 1 mana 1/1 that has Vigilance. Whenever this creature attacks while saddled, it gains +1/+2 and gains flying until end of turn. But has saddle 3, so it's not. It's not
well, a 1/1 with Vigilance, like you play this turn 1, it's gonna get in and do like at least like 1 or 2 damage before maybe you can saddle it, because you're gonna swing with it a couple times at the people who haven't played any creatures yet, and it's not tapping, so like it's still a blocker as well if you need it. And then later on you've got a few bodies or just like a 3 power. If maybe your commander's a 3 power, you can turn this into a 2/3 flyer, which maybe your commander can't get through because it doesn't have flying, but this thing can. So, yeah, I could see this as being pretty decent.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying. Is like, it's pretty decent. Just, what was it again? Another 2/3 flyer. It has, like, a little bit of investment going into it, but this is also a 1-drop. You're not going to complain about it.
I mean, Saddle and Crew both are really not that much of an investment. I mean, Saddle is the fixed version of Crew because it is only activatable as a sorcery, so you have to do this before you go to combat, whereas like crewing, you can do it in response to somebody attacking you, accrue a vehicle and use it as a blocker or that kind of thing. So like this guy isn't going to be doing those kinds of shenanigans, but again, if you have a 3 power commander that you don't normally attack with,
Oh, you know what? Just like the veteran Beast Rider. The veteran Beast Rider literally rides this guy into battle.
That too. And then you don't have to risk your commander either. So there you go.
Yeah, beautiful.
Beautiful.
But we also have we have a great pilot in the set called Interface Ace. It's a two mana artifact creature robot pilot. It's a 0/4. This creature saddles, mounts, and crews vehicles using its toughness rather than its power. And whenever this creature becomes tapped during your turn, untap it. This ability only triggers once. So yeah,
the first thing I think of with this though is Rasad. And I know Rasad it's a deck that I fucked with a bunch, and I know it's not the greatest thing in the world, but like this is another 2 mana 0/4 that's going to attack for 4 with Rasad on the field. But then also
it doesn't have Defender, so you don't have to worry about that.
That too. That also is a difference. But just he's the thing that makes it to where they do the damage, right? So this thing can now swing for 4 and then become untapped and still be a blocker for you. That's a 4 toughness. 4 power and 4 toughness because of Rasad. That feels like a really good spot for it. And there's actually, I want to say, a blue vanilla creature that we don't have on this list that's also like a 0/8 or something. It's one of there's a whole cycle of the vanilla creatures. I think the black one's pretty good. It's 7/2, which I wouldn't want to run it as a commander, but it's still just a big ass body. Oh no, the 0/8's an uncommon, isn't it? They're all uncommon. Okay, so never mind.
Uncommon legendary.
I was just thinking, okay, that also works for Rasad, but it doesn't. Never mind. I misspoke. But yeah, I think it's pretty good there. But in any deck that's white that just needs a big body to block stuff, pretty good because you can tap it to, crew and or saddle if you're running those kinds of cards, and then it does become untapped pretty much immediately. So it can do activations, and then it's a blocker.
If you give it some sort of power to it, it can attack. Attack with the vehicle or mount, which this thing's great. And I think that wraps up all the white cards.
It does. And sadly, moving on to blue, we have one card, which is kind of wild because usually blue is one of the colors that everything, we get 4 or 5 cards where we're like, oh my god, look at all these cards. And well, this is the only, also literally every other color we have more than one card. It's only blue that kind of sucks this time around, but you can read it off. Let's let the people know what it is.
Yeah, it's a bounce off. It's a 1 mana unsummoned that also targets vehicles. So you can bounce back a creature or vehicle. That's it.
And I really don't know that there's any vehicles being played in the format now, and I don't know that this set really changed that at all. So the vehicle part is probably not anything. This is just another 1 mana bounce spell. But it can target your own thing, it can target something else. It doesn't have a clause where it's only opponent stuff. So it can be a thing that bounces your thing, like an Abdel or whatever.
Yeah, cool. I think the only vehicle is Flywheel Racer, and that's it.
Well, I mean, we talked about the vehicle earlier, the one that I was talking about for Fleshraker, that might see some play somewhere else. And then there's some of these, well, I guess the saddle creatures don't matter, so this is a thing that I do not like that Wizards is doing. It's let's make an additional mechanic that's essentially the same thing as another mechanic, but then fix it so that it's not instant speed and broken, but then make cards like this where it says target creature or vehicle. I guess the saddle creatures are just creatures, so I guess it does hit both. But it just feels clunky in that regard. But so a 1 mana bounce, not terrible, and not having any limitations on if you can target your own stuff is also good because you can use this to target your own stuff if you need to. It's an instant, so you can use it as a protection spell as well. Somebody targets your Abdel or whatever with a removal spell, you can say, nah, I'm going to bounce it to my hand.
Yeah, but that's only going that far deep in tanking, not playing Snapback or Snap.
Yeah, does this see play over those? No. Does it see play
does
in addition to?
No.
Exactly. So does it actually see play? Maybe, maybe not. It really depends on how much of a critical mass of those types of effects you want. And I think it is going to see play over Unsummon just because it has that vehicle line. But Unsummon, as you said, doesn't see play. So is it really a good card? Well, no, it was literally the only playable blue card that we could find. So
yeah, and before someone starts typing up in the comment section, You forgot about Flood Your Engine. Like, no, we didn't. The card just sucks. No one.
I mean, there's a couple like enchantment
There's
things
better.
that do stuff, but like there are so many better options of those that like, yeah, it's not really worth it.
Yeah, this one we went over.
There's also a counter spell that's like, counter target artifact or creature spell, I think, unless the controller plays 4, which we have a lot of variants of that sort of thing, but like there's just better counter spells. You're just, like, why do that when you could just Arcane Denial it? And they're going to draw cards, but you're countering anything. And you don't have to worry about them being able to pay for it. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, moving on to black. Maximum Overdrive. It's a 2-mana instant that costs 1 and a black that says put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. It gains Death Touch and Indestructible until end of turn. So you just slap this on Crypt Rats. No other creature, just Crypt Rats.
That's not bad. I was looking at it as more of just an additional protection spell in black. If you're running a bunch of Grave Flickers already, this is... I really wish this was another Grave Flicker. That's what I thought it was going to be when I started reading it, and I was like, eh. But yeah, I mean, it kind of is because, Death Touch, Indestructible, whatever. Also, it is a thing that doesn't tap it down. So, like Undying or whatever, like, it gives it a +1/+1 counter, but it comes back in tapped so that it can't block. This can just be done in response to somebody trying to remove your creature, make it indestructible. Great. Now it's a little bit bigger. Death Touch probably and doesn't matter at that point, but can also be used as a combat trick to just, make something a little bit bigger, kill a thing. You can swing in with your 2/2 at a guy that's got like a 4/4, and he's just like, okay. And then you're like, once you declare blocks, now it's got Death Touch and Indestructible, and it's a little bit bigger, and you kill the thing, and that's cool. I like it, but I don't like it better than the Grave Flickers, at least in the black decks that I play. Yeah, I can see the uses for it. It's kind of a Snakeskin Veil kind of deal, where it's just like, it gets indestructible.
It's Snakeskin and block.
Right. And for that, it's good, because Snakeskin Veil sees play. So
yeah, it's a great card. Again, I know Maximum Overdrive will have a home in some decks. Like I said, the ceiling is technically, Crypt Rats, but the floor is just Indestructible plus Death Touch. Like, I don't think I need to sell that to anyone.
No, not at all. And I don't think black has... they mostly have just the Grave Flickers. I don't think there is something like that where it is just a Snakeskin Veil in black. I don't think that exists yet. So that's just another option.
Yeah, and I think this is like the first standard set in a while where there isn't a Grave Flicker effect. Because usually,
we've been getting it for a while.
Get a throw possibility and a Grave Flicker. This one we don't have it either one, or this one we only have the thrill, no flicker.
And the thrill isn't even the thrill; it's the one that we're going to talk about later, I believe. I don't even.
Yeah, it's still technically a throw possibility.
Sure. So next one is one that I added. It's the only black one that I added, although I did agree with the other picks. This one, I really wish this would have come out like a year ago, because then I probably would have put this in Sivirus, because I used to have a critical mass of these kinds of cards. But it doesn't really work in Sivirus anymore. But I digress. It's called Packdoll Terror. It's 3 and a black for an artifact creature toy. It's a 3/4, which, okay body for the mana. And it says, whenever this creature or another artifact you control enters, each opponent loses a life, you gain a life. So it is a symmetrical drain effect, but if you are in an artifact-heavy list, which Sivirus used to be very artifact-heavy, this would have been another additional way to just like drain people as we're bringing in artifacts. But I cut almost all of the artifacts from the deck, so it's not good there anymore. And I don't really have a deck where it is good, but I feel like just in this pinger meta that we have, there's going to be some sort of black and or black X artifact deck that that matters, and this is just another drain, and we like that.
Probably like some black Toggo list would love this card,
or Keskit decks, maybe because I think they play more artifacts.
Yeah, or some other deck that has some way to like recur the crap out of Blood Fountain. I was really hyped for this card because I was like, wow, we just have double the Zulaport body on a single card and almost have most of the Zulaport text.
Right.
Except for the fact that it says whenever this creature.
But it's another artifact. So it's just, you need to be in an artifact heavy list. If you're in an artifact heavy list, it's in black.
Oh, you know what? I think Abdel Black still plays this anyway.
Yeah, I can see that. For sure. Because
is it better than like Mirkwood Bats or Nadir's Nightblade? Probably not.
no, not at all. But it's just another layer to that sort of plan where black is just draining the table out, and we don't hate that. And it's not like this only triggers once a turn either. So if you are able to cast 2-3 artifacts, you're doing 3 damage to the table and gaining 3 life, which is not bad. You know, it's just
that's what Emerald Black should be doing anyway.
And it's a 3/4, so I mean, it can just swing out. It can block well. It's not a bad body for the cost. And you know, if you are in an artifact heavy deck, you're probably playing mana rocks. So casting this isn't hard. You might even have something that is like affinity or whatever too. So this can count towards that. So I think it's pretty decent.
My next pick is a Grim Bauble. It's a 1-mana artifact that says when this artifact enters, target creature an opponent controls gets -2/-2 until end of turn, and it has an activated ability of 2 and a black, tap and sack it to Surveil 2. So the Surveil 2 is it's just there, but just a single a 1-mana artifact defile? Great, love it.
Yeah, like 1 mana neg 2 is pretty good. It's basically
it's sorcery speed, but who cares?
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna play this anyway because you're in a artifact heavy deck. Maybe this is probably run in a deck that's also running the last one we just talked about. So this is going to trigger that as well and drain the table for 1 and gain you a 1. So
yeah,
and like I was saying before with the colorless that scrap thing that it's just an artifact, but also has these other things like. Anything that ETBs and then also has like a get rid of it and get some other value is pretty good in this format because we don't have a lot of cards that just do all the things all the time. So having the different options to get to these different effects like Surveil or Scry or whatever, just having those on something you could throw down. You throw it down, you get the value, and then you have additional value later on. It's always going to be good, and I think this
like Sir Conrad would love this too. Sir Conrad who plays the Sinister Starfish. This is just triple the Starfish cost for Surveil 2. It still works.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's decent. I mean, it's not. I don't think I have a list where I'm putting this in, but I can definitely see it being played for sure.
And then as a late inclusion, is when I was going through all of the common cards. I saw this again. I was like, "Oh, that's right. People would strangle me if I didn't mention this." It is. I don't know how to pronounce it correctly.
Chitten.
Shitten Gravestalker.
It's not shitten. It's chitten. it's the Mexican version of shitten.
I don't think with my accent. I this is gonna sound like shitten anyway. So Shitten Gravestalker. It's a 6-mana insect warrior with a 5/4 body that says this spell costs 1 less for each artifact or creature in your graveyard. So it has the Hollow Marauder grave reduction, and worst comes to worst, it also has cycling for 2.
I mean, having the Hollow Marauder clause on it, but just for artifacts, means that you're running less creatures than running artifacts
and creatures.
Oh, it's both? Well, fuck. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. It's not forcing. It's not forcing other people to discard, but it is cheap and it's a 5/4.
It's a beater. Yeah, like let's be honest. Like one problem a Hollow Marauder kind of has is that like sure it wants to die all the time, and that's why it has a 2 toughness.
Right.
But what if you just need something to stick to just beat people in the face? This is it.
This does it.
Sir Conrad has another very efficient beater. All right. How about this? Risky Shortcut. It's a 3-mana sorcery that costs 2 and a black. Draw 2 cards. Each opponent loses 2 life.
It's each player. So you lose the 2 life as well. This one goes in pretty much every black deck, I think. It's a 3-mana draw 2. Yeah, it's not Nice Whisper, but it does drain everybody. This is a shoe-in right now for me for my Zoyoa deck, which is already just trying to drain the table and do whatever, and this gives you some card advantage while draining the table. Hitting yourself for 2 doesn't really matter because you're usually draining everybody else. It could also be good in Sivris. I've already put it on considering there because it's just, another draw spell. People are losing life. You're already trying to drain the table out with other effects like the Mirkwood Bats and the Nadir's Nightblade and whatever. Sir Conrad probably likes this too, just because it's more draw, more loss of life. fucking Larry, Dalek Squadron, like anything that's already trying to drain life symmetrically, this is just doing that and drawing you cards, and that's good. So
Yeah,
I see this
like,
fitting into pretty much almost every black deck.
Yeah, if you're happy playing Night's Whisper, you should be happy playing this. Like, sure, it's 1 mana more, but you're also doing 6 damage to the table.
And that's not nothing.
Yeah.
Sometimes that 2 life at the end of a game actually makes a difference where you're like, if I just would have hit you for 2 more earlier in the game, you'd be dead. But I didn't, and now I'm sad.
Yep, and then leading into red, or going into red, we have the first one is Gilded Goda. It's a 2 mana 2/2 that costs 1 on a red. It's a horse mount. Whenever this creature attacks while saddled, create a treasure token, and it has saddle 1.
That's a reasonably costed saddle cost. You know, like that's more where we're at with that. That's a sweet spot where it's just like a dork, a goblin, anything that you make that's a token can just crew this thing, sort of. So yeah.
Yeah, I was talking with Gator that I personally like it for gut, but I'm also like thinking like the perfect turn 2 this already comes down, turn 3 you cast gut mounts the horse attacks, you sack the creature you played turn 1, you turn into a skeleton, and you have an extra treasure just to use for protection spells.
Right, yeah, I could see this as being pretty good in a lot of decks that are low to the ground, can make 1/1 bodies either naturally or via token creation, and then if you can saddle this every turn, just being able to make a treasure every turn is a good amount of mana advantage that you don't really see too much of. So
actually, yeah, now that I'm thinking about it again, I think Kedis decks should appreciate this because Kedis mounts the horse.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's really this could actually be a Malcolm Kedis card, because it's just making you more treasures. But you're already kind of flooding with Malcolm Kedis. Yeah, so maybe not. But maybe Malcolm Breaches?
Kedis already has like too much stuff going on.
Or how about
Kedis
Keleth? Like that seems pretty good there. Like, can make you some mana when you need it.
No, because Kedis Keleth, you want to be swinging with both your commanders at all times.
Oh, yeah, because you don't get the claws. Yeah. Okay, yeah. I don't play the deck, obviously.
So maybe Dargo Kedis might play this, and just have Kedis ride the horse, and you have extra treasures to use as like little mini black lotuses for Dargo later.
Yeah, you might need that. I see this being a solid choice in a lot of decks.
Yeah, because like any extra turns that this thing survives, I'm super happy about. That's the only problem. I don't really see this the horse living that long outside of like maybe 1 or 2 turns.
Only because there's going to be bigger blockers that are just going to kill it. I don't think people are using removal on this, to be honest, but I mean, they might.
I don't know. We'll see, because like I would be happy to block this thing all day too. Like, no, you get your treasure and that's it.
Yes, but it gets the treasure token regardless of if it's blocked. It doesn't have to do combat damage, just when it attacks. So you're getting those treasures all the time. It's just you need to be careful where you're swinging because you don't want to lose it. So yeah.
Yeah, this is just amazing in Boros decks because you have all the protection spells in the world.
Right. So this next one is probably my favorite card for Pauper Commander in the set. I'm just going to say it now. It is my favorite card from the set for this format. It's Magmakin Artillerist. It's a 1/4 elemental pirate. Notably, a pirate might work in some... we don't really think it's going to go in Malcolm Kedis, but it might go in Malcolm Breaches. I don't know. It's 2 and a red. Whenever you discard 1 or more cards, this creature deals that much damage to each opponent. And it has cycling for 1 and a red. And when you cycle the card, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. So it is an incidental just deal 1 to the table. Incidental sort of, damage potential is fine. That's not where you're playing the card. You're probably not cycling this card ever because you want it. No. But it does have already a couple of combos that people have figured out. The easiest one, and this is again where you want to be an Izzet, maybe not necessarily Malcolm, but I am running the Baby Crom in cPDH. I haven't played it in a while because it's not Malcolm Kedis, so it's just not as good, but I feel like it still has legs, and this might be a thing that helps push it over the edge, because you don't care about it being an elemental, you don't care about it being a pirate, you just care about the fact that if you put a Phidian Eye on this thing, and you naturally have 8 cards in hand. When you move to end step, you just win the game. Pretty much guaranteed. As long as it's an early enough turn to where nobody's really churned through a bunch of their deck, you're going to kill everybody before you draw yourself out. Because you're going to deal the damage off of the discard, and then you're going to draw 3, and then you're going to deal the damage. And as long as you have, say, I think 60 cards or so, you're probably killing the table. No, also, while you're drawing the shit, in between, you can also do other stuff. So, if it's instant speed.
Fitting the Eye is a May. So you don't have to draw off of each ping.
That is true. If you do get to a point where you are going to deck yourself before you've killed everyone, you've probably killed like 2 of the players, and now you can just say, okay, I'll pass, and then...
Yeah, but if your deck is that thin by that point, something went horribly wrong, or it's a super grindy game.
I agree. I think this just ends at end step with an Affinity Eye on it, you just win the game. It is very much like Glenhorn Buccaneer, which I play in like Brawl and Shabraz in cEDH, where you can put the Curiosity effect on the Glinthorn, and just you can also do it with Brawlin, and that's why it's kind of layered and cool. But yeah, if you move to and so I've only won that way one time ever in the history of me playing Brawl and Shabraz. Yeah, like I always won by actually performing the full combo, which doesn't rely on going to end step. But it was always a backup, and it did happen one time for me, and it was pretty cool. In this case, yeah, like Glinthorn combo is easy to win with, but actually winning by going to end step and having to discard and then drawing cards as you discard and doing the damage to create a loop, that's exceedingly rare. And that also is something you should probably keep in mind, because yes, that is the easy way to make this thing combo, and is something that can be potentially there and something you could work towards to like make it more efficient, I suppose. But yeah, it's not going to happen a lot, because even in the Crom that I'm using as an example, basically has a clause that if every second spell you cast, you draw a card to put a counter on him. Well, that means you have to be casting a bunch of spells every turn, right? You have to be casting at least 2 every turn for it to be viable. And then you also need to be able to have this on the field, get the Ophidian Eye, and then draw into enough to where you have to discard. So it's a lot of setup. It's not going to be something you're just going to easily win with, but it is a new combo, and combos are pretty scarce in this format, so seeing that is cool. But you pointed out that there is an additional combo, if you want to give us that one.
And that's also in Izzet and Gruul. This is private public knowledge, because technically Gator posted it in the Common Theory deck brewing channel. So if you're in that server, you can go check out his Rocco list. So with Magmakin Artist, it combos with Hanger Scrounger. Whenever you discard a card, you can, or whenever this creature becomes tapped, discard a card, and then you may draw a card. But when it ETBs, you give another creature a +1/+1 counter, and it has the same ability as Hanger Scrounger. So if you put it on an untapper, like Seeker of Skybreak, Vizier of Tumbling Sands, or what was the other one that we were talking about? Clever Conjurer. Congratulations, you won the game.
So this is why I thought it was kind of good for Malcolm Kedis, because I'm already running the Ophidian Eye, so it was like, well, put it in. And then it's just an additional way that you could potentially win the game on accident. It's also a pirate, so like it is incidentally gonna get you triggers off of Malcolm. So that feels okay, but then the more we talk about it, the more it's like, it's just, I think so too.
Yeah, because Breach is already not playing any cards from your hand anyway. So you're stealing your opponent's decks, playing off of their cards.
And you can hold up more cards in hand to get to that end step to discard,
that makes sense. The new variant that we're working on has, all of the, Faceless Looting effects and more draw discard effects just to help support the Magmakin.
Yeah.
That's the only thing, like, I wish, I know by, like, the year 2036 we'll have multiple copies of this Magmakin.
Right.
But for right now, it feels kind of rough just supporting a single one of in a deck. But again, in Rocco, it's doable, because Rocco, you can tutor whatever you like at whatever time. Really super important is that this is 3 mana, so we can grab it with Drift the Phantasm Twin.
Yes, and that was a thing that I did immediately when I was considering putting it in Crom and whatever. It was like, add Drift, because you can just get it with Drift. You can also get the
you get both
with Drift. Right.
Yeah.
So it's
or
both of your pieces.
Lookout.
Yeah, that too. What is next? We've got a couple more.
This is a card that I alluded to earlier. It's a Kickoff Celebrations. It's a 2-mana enchantment that says start your engine. This enchantment enters, you may discard a card. Then, if you do, draw 2 cards. And it also has max speed, sacrifice this enchantment. Creatures and vehicles you control gain haste until end of turn. So this is slightly sideways upgrade to Bitter Reunion.
Yeah, it's not better or worse. It's redundancy is the way I like to look at it. They're both two CMC to play, and both of them have the clause when it ETBs you can discard a card, draw 2 cards, which is pretty much the real reason why you're playing it, because it's just
if you want to play anything with throw possibility, you have to run this one.
Right, and it's an additional, and in that regard, it is a backup for that. And they both also can be sacrificed to give your creatures haste until end of turn, which can be important in later turns where your commander's been removed for whatever reason, and you need him to come back and be activatable or usable on that turn. The issue with this one that makes it slightly worse is that it requires you to get to max speed, which means it's going to sit on the table for a minute before you get to that. But the other one costs a mana to sack it. So there's trade-offs either way, but I feel like when it comes to redundancy, like having both is probably worth your time.
Yeah, if you're running one, then you should run the other.
I agree.
Simple as that.
I think it's just your index that want haste enablers, or your index that want thrills, or both. And in most cases, if you're on both, then you run both. Simple as that.
Simple as that.
Next one up is Pedal to the Metal. This is a instant for X and a red, and it says target creature gets +X/+0 and gains first strike until end of turn.
This is the most Zada card I've ever seen in my life.
It's very much a Zada card, because that's going to just pump the whole fucking team and make them huge. Also, I feel like maybe probably a Dargo card too, because it's just it's not a double strike, but it is a first strike, so maybe you get through a blocker and then still trample over.
It's a nice little combat trick in Dargo. Just like, how much is it? Do a little bit over. Oh yeah, cool, we're good.
Yeah, I mean, it's not fire breathing, but it is, that same sort of idea. And those are the kind of decks that run it. You're going to be on Dargo or something else that's red that, cares about pumping something. But the first strike is probably the I wish it was double strike, to be honest, but,
Oh, no, if it was double strike, it would probably be X red.
We'd be okay with that. I don't think anybody's saying that's a bad cost, but it's nothing super special. But nice little combat trick in red. It can be used in a lot of different decks, but those are probably the places where it sees a home.
The next one is Dynamite Diver is a 1-mana 1/1 goblin that costs a single red. When this creature saddles mounts, and cruise vehicles, although it has power 2 or great, was it 2 greater? So it's always mounts for 3.
Cruise and or saddles as a 3. So like if this is in that deck with that one that we talked about earlier, the one white pip with the saddle 3, like this thing could crew that, but also at 1 mana. So like for 2 mana, you now have something that can get crewed and whatever.
Yeah, it is actually just a Goblin Arsonist. That's it.
Right. Whenever it dies, it deals 1 damage to any target. It's the Goblin Arsonist. It's there's a couple other goblins that are very similar, but it's just redundancy for that. You got your easy turn 1 drop that is gonna swing around, and if it dies, it can ping off something else on the table. It's very similar to like what was that? Shambling Ghast. Those other types of effects where it's just like if this thing dies, it can get rid of something else. And then if you incidentally happen to have a vehicle or a mount that is 3, this just can crew it by itself, and that's pretty cool. All right, you read off the first one because I added the second one. We're moving to green. What's the first one?
Green is super boring. It's run over. It's so this is a 2-mana instant that costs 1 on green. It costs 1 less if it targets a mount or vehicle you control. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature an opponent controls. So
you're usually going to target your own shit. So this is really just a 1 green, make the thing, fight the thing. But 9 times out of 10, you're probably not playing a mount or a vehicle, so it does actually cost 2. So the idea here is that it's supposed to target your thing that's a mount or a vehicle, so it only costs 1, and then does a bunch of damage to an opponent's creature without you having to actually fight to sacrifice the thing. But in this
Yeah, that's
instance.
it. Just a 1-mana bite's is nice to have.
It's pretty
It
good,
has,
but
it's conditional, but it's nice to have.
I
We'll
mean,
take it.
even still, a 2 mana, just your creature deals damage without having it be a fight is pretty good. Because fight spells are great until they start killing your creatures. Also, when you're trading, they don't feel good.
Yeah, no,
Bite
they're off.
is definitely a lot better. So
Yeah, you have a much more interesting and better green card.
right. Yeah, and that is Beast Rider Vanguard. It's 1 and a green for a Human Knight 2/2. Nothing too crazy there. It's a bear. It's a 2/2 for 2. But it does have for 4 and a green, which is kind of expensive, but you're in green, so you got dorks, you got other shit. You're making manas. You're going to be able to activate this at least once a turn. And it lets you look at the top 3 cards of your library, and you can reveal a permanent card from among them and put it into your hand. And then the rest go on the bottom of your library in any order. It being a permanent is pretty spicy compared to like pretty much everything else we have that's like this, like militia buglers and other green cards that do this sort of thing. It's usually like either a creature or a land. Sometimes it's like a creature or an enchantment. And that's pretty much the options we have. And in this case, it's just a permanent. So anything can be a land. It can be a non-land. It can't be a spell. That's it. The only restriction, it can't be a spell. So, it's only digging top 3, which isn't like crazy. But again, if you can make infinite mana, this will just take every creature out of your deck and put it in your hand. And if you're on infinite mana, you can cast all of those as well. And then maybe you're on that veteran Beast Rider and you made infinite mana and you did this and then you pump them all and you just win the game. Maybe. I don't know. That's Magical Christmas Land. Probably not happening. But just the card selection is pretty good. Because this comes down early. It's just a 2/2. It doesn't do much. And then later on in the game when you have nothing else to do, on somebody's end step, you do this at instant speed. You put something in your hand. It may be a land drop you need. It may be a creature you need. It may be an artifact. It might be an enchantment. It's doing what you want. And for that, we can't hate on it.
Not everything can be Malevolent Rumble.
And it's similar enough to that to where it's actually pretty good. Malevolent Rumble was probably the best one we had gotten printed in years. And this is kind of on that same sort of level. With that, moving on to colorless, we got 3 more cards to talk about, and then we're going to call it a day.
Yeah. You're already running this in Playing Fleshraker.
I am. It's a Vishkar Raceway. It's just a land. It's got the start your engines mechanic. It comes in, it taps for colorless. It doesn't come in tapped, so that's great. In any deck where you're probably in like 2 color or less, this is probably fine because it's, a colorless land. It's a utility in that sort of sense. But once you hit max speed, you can pay 3, tap it, discard a card, and draw a card. It's not card advantage, but it's card selection. And it doesn't happen immediately, but it does happen later. And when that happens on a land, like, it feels so fucking free. Because you just play this turn 1, and you're just like, it's just a land. It taps for a colorless. Great. In Fleshraker particularly, it's just a slam dunk. Because you don't care about colors. So this is actually literally your colorless. that you tap immediately. It does what you need it to do, and then in later turns, you can use this on somebody's end step to discard the card in your hand that you just have no use for, and draw.
Because the problem that Fleshraker, from what I've noticed, that it runs into is like you just have lands in hand. You can't do crap with land.
Honestly, I'm running 30 lands, which is kind of high for some of my Pauper decks, but I only did it because, it's colorless, and, you always want to have that kind of large amount of mana, just because, like, there are the Eldrazi's and things that cost 8 or 9 mana, and you want to be able to hard cast those if you need to. But I'm constantly looking for other ways to draw cards, and this is an additional way, and it's on the land, so it's free as fuck. You play this, you have a mana. I'm sad that the Muramasa one, I covered that in the cPDH review. That one is the same thing, but it comes in, it taps for colorless, and it has start your engines, and then once you got to max speed, it taps for 2 colorless. I really wish I could put that in Glaring Fleshraker, because that's just a free Soul Ring at some point,
Yeah.
But
I was telling anyone that I know that plays casual Commander that Muramasa Raceway is probably just like so much better than Temple
of the False God. Yeah, I literally said that in my set review as well. I was like, this is just a better Temple of the False God, because Temple of the False God, 90% of the time, is a land that does nothing. Because you have to have 5 other lands, and that's just...
Yeah.
I mean, yes, it's gonna happen, but it's just awful. Like, to have a land that does nothing, and this doesn't do nothing. It comes down turn 1 and is immediately effective, and then turn 3 or 4. I mean, you're on Fleshraker, so you're dealing damage to people every turn the Fleshraker's out. So probably turn 4 or 5, this is online, and then you're already out of cards because you've been storming off, and now you can, discard that useless card in your hand that you just top decked and get a different card. And that's what the deck needs.
Yeah, it's amazing for there. Let's see. We're going to save the best for last. So the next card is Starting Column.
Yeah.
It's a 3 mana rock with Start Your Engines. Tap to add 1 mana of any color. Once you hit max speed, you can sacrifice this artifact to draw 2 cards, then discard a card.
It's just more value. I mean, this could go right into the Fleshraker as well, in the sense that...
I actually don't know how I feel about this one, to be honest.
So, I like it in... Fleshraker is probably a bad example. Yes, it can be fine there, but it is some card draw later on. But I like this better in decks that actually care about colors and actually care about having mana rocks. Like I can see this being, maybe not in Abdel's because flickering it doesn't really do anything. But
you know what? Any deck that plays Command Sphere, you just replace Command Sphere with this thing.
I can see that. Yeah, same CMC, same add 1 mana of any color, but you can draw 2 and discard 1. That makes it slightly better.
Yeah, you're going 1 card deeper.
It's not amazing. It's just a card that I think can be seen. People are playing a lot of 3 mana rock. Like, this is better than a Manolith. This is better than, a lot of... I agree, but I think it's better than, what's the indestructible one? The
Darksteel Ingot?
Yeah, it's better than that. It's better than anything that's just 3 mana, add 1 mana of any color, because it has an upside. It replaces any of those. So if you're running one of those kind of cards in your deck, this is better. I personally don't really run a lot of 3 mana rocks, so I only put it here because those are hard to find a home for, especially now. But again, if you're running Command Sphere, just replace it with Starting Column and test it out. Let me know how it goes. Because again, Start Your Engine, not that hard to really get to. And by the time that you need to sack it, if you ever do need to sack your Command Sphere, this does go a card deeper. And it's free. So, last card on the list. And this is one that I already put into Glaring Fleshraker, but also could see play in a lot of decks. It's Wreck Remover. It's a 3/4 for 4, so still decent body for the mana cost. And it says whenever it enters or attacks, exile up to 1 target card from a graveyard, and you gain a life. And it also has cycling too. Glaring Fleshraker for me has been very good when I've been able to find ways to gain life. Because people will start targeting you because you're symmetrically draining them out, and they don't like that. So as much life gain as you can find, I'm running Campfire, I'm running a bunch of other stuff that does gain life over time. And this is also Grave Hate. So on top of this just comes in and removes a problematic thing in a graveyard that you're scared of, and you gain life. It also does that every single time you attack, and it's a 3/4, so you're not scared to attack with this. If this is like a 2/2 or something, it would be a lot worse, because you would barely ever get the claws.
The 4 toughness is amazing.
And if it happens to be where you're not against a bunch of Hollowed Marauders and other decks that care about graveyards, it just draws you a card and replaces itself. And maybe you can even recur it. I mean, there are other colors, white and black and whatever, that could potentially just recur this thing for you, and then use it again. So you cycled it, you got a card, and then you cast your, whatever late to dinner, and now it's back. Graveyard Hate is a premium right now, too. There are a lot of decks that are definitely leaning on graveyard strategy, so being able to remove cards that they might want to target. I mean, this hoses a, Flicker decks, it hoses a lot of other things that care about graveyards, so... pretty good.
Yeah, again, I love that Wizards have been printing whenever this card enters or attacks.
Yeah.
That has been so amazing to see.
It's good for Limited, and then definitely good for this format as well. But yeah, I mean, that pretty much wraps up what we had here for the set review. Franklin, thank you for joining me. Tell the people where they can find your podcast.
Yeah, so you can find me over at the Common Theory YouTube channel. The link should be in the description down below, where we talk about Competitive Pauper Commander all the time. We're the #1 cPDH podcast on the internet. We're also on Blue Sky, Twitter, TikTok. I need to keep posting on Instagram, but I hate Instagram so much.
I hate Instagram too. I don't even have one. But yeah, I mean, these guys are all over the place. I talk about them. You talk about them. I edit for you guys. So, obviously, this is kind of a sister podcast collaboration sort of thing. For me personally, we also have a Patreon and, all of the socials as well. Link trees in the description below. You can find everything that we're looking for. We also have playmats with a new one to come, because Franklin here helped me with a new logo for this Let's Get It Poppin' thing, which you might have already seen on the last thumbnail. He's also been helping me out with the thumbnails for these, which is appreciated. But yeah, I'm probably going to put out some new merch. So new mat, maybe some new t-shirts, hoodies, that sort of thing. But yeah, if you guys are interested in any of that kind of stuff, all the information is down below. If you join the Patreon, little as $1 is just no frills. You send me $1 every month. Great.
Yeah, that's all you need to do to support the channel. Just
honestly,
throw a little money. And if you don't want to do that, just go watch another video.
I mean, likes, comments, subscribes, all that stuff helps. Like I said, there's merch available out there too. I'm not trying to make a living off of this. We're just trying to make a little extra money to improve quality and to give me a little more motivation to continue to crank out this stuff. So if you enjoyed this video, again, like, comment, subscribe. Let us know if we missed anything that you thought was really good from the sets. And otherwise, Franklin, again, thank you for joining me. And we'll see you guys whenever the next one happens. I don't really have a schedule for this, but I intend to keep this thing going. So lots more Pauper commentary to come. But till then, we'll see y'all later.
Take care, everyone.